Alright guys, so continuing my Oscar season coverage, today I wanted to dive into one of the more interesting and hardest to call categories this year. It is Best Supporting Actress. This is like my favorite category of the Oscars this year because firstly, I'm a huge fan of all these actresses. Secondly, it's such a nice eclectic mix of nominees. You've got your first time nominees like total newcomer Maria Bakalova for her performance in Borat Subsequent MovieFilm. You've got Amanda Seyfried getting her first nomination for her star-making turn in Mank. You've got veteran of Korean cinema Yuh-Jung Youn with her first Oscar nomination. And then you've got a repeat of 2 years ago with Glenn Close and Olivia Colman battling it out in the same category, except last time was Best Actress, this time it's Best Supporting Actress. This is Olivia Colman's second nomination, and it's Glenn Close's 8th? So yeah, it's a really nice mix of nominees. It's not the most diverse in terms of people of color. In fact, this is the least diverse of all the acting categories this year. However, it is still quite an international selection of nominees because you've got Maria Bakalova, who is the first ever Bulgarian to be nominated for an acting Oscar. You've also got Yuh-Jung Youn, who's the first South Korean person to be nominated for an acting Oscar. And then you've got English Rose, Olivia Colman also nominated. And capping off the category, we've got Amanda Seyfried and Glenn Close representing the United States. And the final reason why this is my favorite category this year is because the race for Best Supporting Actress is the tightest of all the categories this year. I've spoken to so many different Oscar pundits, and I have yet to find a consensus on who they think is going to win. Everyone has a different opinion, and everyone has made a compelling case for the person that they think is going to win. And that's what makes it so exciting, because until the name is read out on April 26th, I don't think anybody knows with 100% certainty who it's going to be. Normally at this point in the Oscars race, we'd have our 5 nominees, and within those 5, we'd have 1 or 2, potentially 3 serious contenders to win. Not this year though. This is currently a 4-way race. And also, this ain't no normal award season, alright? This is COVID year, baby. Everything that we think we know from previous years can't really be applied to this year because campaigning has gone virtual this year, and it's harder for industry experts now to gauge just exactly who is making the biggest splash in the voters' circles. Even you guys in my comment sections on my previous Oscar vids and Twitter polls can't seem to make up your mind as to who's gonna win Best Supporting Actress. But what about you guys? Who do you think is going to win Best Supporting Actress? Give me some justification. I wanna hear your compelling arguments as to who you think it's going to be. Let me know in that comment section down below. Also, help support my channel by hitting that thumbs up button and click subscribe for more Oscars content. And if you want to take part in my Oscar polls, be sure to follow me on Twitter. All my social media links in the video description down below. So for this video, I'm going to go through all 5 of the nominees and make their case. I'll list their pros and cons, which are working for and against them winning the Oscar. And then I'll give you some analysis afterwards. And then I'll give you who I personally want to win the most, and then followed by who I think is going to win. They don't always overlap. Sometimes they do, but not always. Hopefully what I have to say about this category will help some of you when you're filling out your own Oscar prediction ballots. If there's any other Oscar categories that you would like an in-depth discussion and predictions video of, let me know in that comment section down below, and the ones which have the most requests I will get to first. I started off with Best Supporting Actress because I think this is one of the categories which most people are struggling to call. Alright, so going alphabetically, first up we have Maria Bakalova for her performance as Tutar in Borat Subsequent MovieFilm. So, pros. What is working in Maria Bakalova's favor for her to win? Well, for starters, she is the only one of the 5 nominees to land every single precursor award nomination that she needed. BAFTA, SAG, Golden Globe. Technically she was in lead actress for Golden Globe, which still counts, and also the Critics' Choice Award. And so far, she is the only one of the 5 nominees to have won something significant, the Critics' Choice Award. She's also won plenty of Film Festival and Critics' Circles awards, but remember, critics don't vote at the Academy Awards, but her track record speaks for itself. Her performance in Borat Subsequent MovieFilm was universally applauded. She was a total newcomer who held her own against comedic improv heavyweight Sacha Baron Cohen. Now that's impressive. Her next pro is also a con, depending on which way you look at it, because her performance is mostly comedic. Some might say that works against her. However, there's an argument to be made that her performance being comedic in a pack of nominees, which is mostly serious, dramatic roles, actually helps her to stand out from the pack. It makes her unique and distinguished. Also, a comedic performance winning would end the Academy's streak of genre bias towards comedic performances. I can count the number of strictly comedic Oscar-nominated performances that we got last decade on one hand. So giving the Oscar to a strictly comedic performance helps to pave the way for future comedy roles to be nominated in the future, and it's also good for the Academy's image because they're being inclusive to a variety of different performance types. Also, she'd be the first ever Bulgarian to win an acting Oscar, and that's definitely a bonus. And I asked you guys on Twitter, who did you think was going to win Best Supporting Actress, and you guys said Maria Bakalova. Only narrowly just beating out Yuh-Jung Youn. Now for the cons. What is working against Maria Bakalova winning that Oscar? Like I said previously, comedic performances tend to be overlooked at the Oscars. In fact, the last person to win an Oscar for a strictly comedic performance was Alan Arkin for Little Miss Sunshine. That was back in 2007. So yeah, genre bias is a big obstacle. Also, not only is the role comedic, but it's a very different type of comedic to what the Academy is used to. In Borat 2, a lot of Bakalova's lines and actions were improvised, so it's an unconventional comedic performance compared to a scripted comedic performance. Perhaps it's too far out of left field for some Academy voters to appreciate. It's the type of comedic performance which I don't think everybody gets. However, on the flip side of that argument, you can make the claim that what Bakalova had to do in Borat was more skillful and challenging. Like, some voters might actually be impressed by her improv abilities. Plus, the shock factor and how she handled the Rudy Giuliani hotel scene, that's probably going to be in a lot of Academy's minds when they come to make their votes. And also, Maria Bakalova is essentially a brand newcomer to Hollywood. Like, she was a surprise breakout star of 2020, and perhaps some of the Academy voters might see her nomination as enough validation. Like, her career is only just beginning, really. So has she put in enough legwork, especially compared to veterans like Glenn Close, Yuh-Jung Youn, or Olivia Colman? And the last con is that Borat Subsequent MovieFilm wasn't nominated for Best Picture. While you don't strictly need your film to be nominated for Best Picture in order to win Best Supporting Actress, look at Regina King in If Beale Street Could Talk, or Alison Janney in I, Tonya, it certainly does help, because a lot of the Oscar voters do tend to prioritize the Best Picture nominees first out of all the stuff that they have to watch. So if you're in a Best Picture contender, you have a better chance of your performance being seen. So Maria Bakalova's performance might not be as seen as some of her fellow nominees. Okay, so next up we have Glenn Close for her performance as Mama in Hillbilly Elegy. What are the pros for Glenn Close winning? Well, for starters, she has the best narrative of all 5 of the nominees. The whole close but no Oscar narrative. She's been nominated 7 previous times for an Oscar and still hasn't won yet. And the last time she was nominated, where she famously lost out to her again co-nominee Olivia Colman, was one of the biggest upsets in recent memory. So she has a sympathetic, overdue for recognition narrative working in her favor. She is beloved by the Academy, an industry veteran, and after such a surprising loss last time, there could be a collective sense of compensating her now for the previous loss and giving her an Oscar to celebrate her career as a whole. Also, the fact that she's up against Olivia Colman again in the same category, I don't know if it's a pro or con, but there's no denying it's poetic. It's an interesting do-over. Now, as for cons, like Maria Bakalova, Glenn Close's performance isn't in a Best Picture contender, and Glenn Close knows from personal experience that this matters, and I think that's part of the reason why she didn't win Best Actress for The Wife, because not enough people had seen it, because it wasn't a Best Picture contender like Olivia Colman's The Favourite was. Also, Hillbilly Elegy was critically panned. Now, this doesn't matter too much because, like I said before, critics don't vote at the Oscars, but it does illustrate that the film is somewhat divisive, and the same can be said about Glenn Close's performance, because she received an Oscar nomination and a Razzie nomination for the same role in Hillbilly Elegy. And just for you guys that don't know what a Razzie is, the Razzies is an awards body which celebrates the worst of cinema each year. So the fact that Glenn Close's performance in Hillbilly Elegy is both being celebrated by the Oscars and mocked by the Razzies is quite interesting. Side note, that's only happened 2 times previously where an actor's performance has been nominated at both the Oscars and the Razzies. The first was Amy Irving for Yentl and James Coco for Only When I Laugh. You go, James Coco! So the Razzie nomination does beg the question, is this the right role for Glenn Close to win her first Oscar for? It is a very big performance, like some might say over the top, with the frizzy hair, clenched jaw, comically southern accent, the leathered prosthetics, and the huge spectacles. But I can argue that also might work in her favor, because at the Oscars, they have shown that sometimes the bigger acting often triumphs over the more subtle, nuanced acting. Look at Alison Janney beating Laurie Metcalf a few years prior. But again, some voters might see every character choice that Glenn Close makes as too exaggerated or too much. There's nothing subtle about her performance in Hillbilly Elegy. I personally don't think it's her best performance, but Glenn Close could be one of those actors that ends up winning their first Oscar for the wrong role. It's happened plenty of times. Some of the voters might think we should honor her now whilst we can, because we might not get another chance. Having said that, she does have Sunset Boulevard in the pipeline, which would be a perfect role for her to win her first Oscar for, but a majority of the Academy might think it's now or never. She also hasn't won anything for this role yet. She's been nominated in a few places, but no wins yet. So her track record indicates that there isn't a lot of support for Glenn Close. Next up, we have Olivia Colman for her role as Anne in The Father. Side note, if Olivia Colman wins, I think she'll be the first ever actor to win 2 consecutive Oscars for playing 2 different characters with the same name. So Queen Anne in The Favourite and Anne in The Father. And I'm just realizing now that both those movies have the same initials, TF. The Favourite, The Father. Coincidence? I think not. Anyway, enough rambling. What are Olivia Colman's pros? Well, for starters, after her previous win and iconic acceptance speech, she is beloved by the Academy. I think some voters would just vote for Olivia Colman just for the joy of hearing another hilarious acceptance speech from her. And remember in the last acceptance speech that she gave that she prophesized this was never going to happen again? How delightful would it be to prove her wrong? Her performance is also in a Best Picture contender, so that gives her a boost. Also, The Father received 6 nominations, which was better than expected. And while The Father is treasured, it doesn't appear to be a frontrunner in any of the categories that it's nominated for. Although if I had it my way, The Father would win for Best Editing and Production Design. But if the Academy do want to honor The Father, then Olivia Colman might be the best area to acknowledge it. Because Hopkins isn't beating Boseman, but Colman could do a repeat and win this year. Okay, so what are Olivia Colman's cons? What's working against her? Well, she's fighting a been there, done that narrative because she is a recent winner. She won Best Actress back in 2019, which was only 2 years ago. So some voters might be thinking it's too soon to honor Olivia Colman again, and she doesn't need the win as much as others. However, it can be done because Mahershala Ali and Christoph Waltz both managed to win back-to-back Oscars with only 2 years apart. So there is a chance that Olivia Colman can overcome the too soon narrative. And the fact that she's up against Glenn Close again, I don't know if it's a pro or a con. But there is an argument to be made that history could repeat itself. Especially with the fact that Olivia Colman is in a Best Picture contender and Glenn Close isn't. But it could work against Olivia Colman. Some voters might want to balance the scales by giving it to Glenn Close. Also, Colman hasn't won anything substantial for this role yet. Her stats aren't as secure as Maria Bakalova's or Yuh-Jung Youn's. And even more baffling was her snub at BAFTA, her home turf. But she did secure the nomination at SAG, which is important. Alright, next up we have Amanda Seyfried for her performance as Marion Davies in Mank. What are Seyfried's pros? Well, for starters, she's playing a real-life Hollywood starlet, Marion Davies. That's a role the Academy tend to like. Real-life figures from the entertainment industry tend to speak to the Academy. Look at Renee Zellweger as Judy Garland, Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury, even Cate Blanchett as Katharine Hepburn in The Aviator. Seyfried's performance is also in a Best Picture contender, Mank, which just so happens to be the most nominated film this year with 10 nominations. So that's something. And for a while, Amanda Seyfried seemed to be the early frontrunner for this category, which brings me into my cons, because her odds dropped significantly when she failed to land the BAFTA and SAG nominations. And she also didn't win at the Golden Globes or the Critics' Choice, so she's going into the Oscars with no previous precursor wins. And last but not least, we have Yuh-Jung Youn for her performance as Grandma Sunja in Minari. What are Yuh-Jung Youn's pros? Well, first of all, Minari is a Best Picture contender, so her performance has a better chance of being seen by the majority of the Academy. She's landed most of the important precursor nominations, BAFTA and SAG, and in terms of stats, she's also won a ton of Critics' Circles and Film Festival awards, not as many as Maria Bakalova, but still a generous amount. Her being the first ever South Korean actor to be nominated for an Oscar is huge, and in South Korea, she is a legend. She's had 5 decades worth of performances under her belt, and she's often considered the South Korean equivalent of Meryl Streep. So while this might be her first Oscar nomination, she is an established industry veteran with a wealth of experience and credits to her name. She could be seen as someone more deserving than, say, Maria Bakalova or Amanda Seyfried, who are still in the early chapters of their careers. And as the only nominee who is a person of color, she is the only bit of diversity in this category. And after the total shutout of all Asian performances at last year's Oscars, a year where there was exceptional options to pick Asian performances with films like The Farewell and Best Picture winner Parasite, there might be a collective sense of wanting to correct that mistake by acknowledging an Asian performance this year. Again, Steven Yeun won't beat Chadwick Boseman, but Yuh-Jung Youn could win here. The Academy might see awarding Yuh-Jung Youn with a win as a way to make up for the snub of Zhao Zhuzhen in The Farewell last year, because they are similar characters, grandmothers with no filters. But that does lead me into my cons for Yuh-Jung Youn. Grandmother roles don't tend to do that well at the Oscars, and that's also another con for Glenn Close, because they both played grandmas. But also, because Yuh-Jung Youn is the first ever South Korean actor to be nominated for an Oscar, we can't really look at history and compare it to anybody, because we just don't have any data to compare to other South Korean actors that got nominated before her. But that's all the more reason to award Yuh-Jung Youn with the award, because it is criminal how few Asian performances have won Oscars. I think I can actually count them again on one hand. Plus, Yuh-Jung Youn's performance is more than deserving. Okay, so we've gone through all the pros and cons of all 5 nominees. It's time for some analysis. At the start of this video, I mentioned that I think Best Supporting Actress is a 4-way race. So who do I think isn't in contention to win this? Sadly, that's Amanda Seyfried. As much as I loved her performance in Mank, I think her nomination is where her Oscar journey ends this year. She sadly just doesn't have enough precursor nominations and wins, or enough of a narrative to get behind. There was a time when she was considered the frontrunner of this category, but without a BAFTA and SAG nomination, her Oscar nomination wasn't a guarantee, but she still made it, so her nomination at the Oscars is a win in itself. And I'm just happy that we do live in a world now where Karen from Mean Girls is an Oscar-nominated actress. So that means I think it is a 4-way race between Maria Bakalova, Glenn Close, Olivia Colman, and Yuh-Jung Youn. And honestly, it could go to any one of them. They all have a claim. There are 3 ways you can win an acting Oscar. Firstly, you can win based off of track record, as in statistics from previous precursor wins from other awards bodies. Secondly, you can win based off of narrative. If you have a good story, that can be a major advantage at the Oscars. And the third way you can win is solely off of the strength, merit, and effectiveness of your performance. But when it comes to acting, what one considers as a great performance is subjective. So you can make an argument that anybody in this category can win based off of performance, apart from maybe Glenn Close because of her Razzie nomination. If we're going based off track records, then Maria Bakalova or Yuh-Jung Youn should be winning the Oscar. They have a comfortable lead in wins from the film festivals and critics circles. However, between the two, Maria Bakalova has won more. She's also been nominated everywhere that she needed to be, and she's the only nominee to have won something substantial so far, the Critics' Choice Award. If we're going based on narrative, the most obvious or juiciest narrative is Glenn Close. 8-time nominee, no previous wins. She's got the always the bridesmaid, never the bride narrative. So she's overdue for a long, illustrious career. However, Yuh-Jung Youn is also an industry veteran, and her narrative is that she is the first ever South Korean actor to ever be nominated for an Oscar. And her win helps to redeem the Academy's image for neglecting Asian performances for so long. Olivia Colman's narrative is directly tied in with Glenn Close, with the history repeating itself narrative. It's almost a rivalry narrative. And Olivia Colman beating Glenn Close a second time would make the headlines. Maria Bakalova's narrative is the underdog comedy performance shattering the hoity-toity expectations that a serious dramatic performance needs to win at the Oscars. Her winning defies the odds and demonstrates appreciation and inclusivity for comedic performances. Plus, she would be the first ever acting win for Bulgaria. I can definitely see an outcome where the Academy gives it to Glenn Close. She's paid her dues, she has the sympathy vote, and she's beloved. If she does lose this, then she will tie with Peter O'Toole for the most ever competitive acting Oscar nominations with no wins, with 8. I don't think that's something that the Academy wants to see. And even if it's not her best role, the win signifies her whole career. It's not just Hillbilly Elegy, it's a career award. And she wouldn't be the first actor to win their first Oscar for the wrong role. Al Pacino, Leonardo DiCaprio, Judi Dench, Russell Crowe. If you've got any more, let me know in that comment section below. I'll say this, if Glenn Close triumphs at the SAGs on April 4th, then I will probably put my bet on her to win at the Oscars. I know she previously won the SAG for The Wife and then lost out at the Oscars, and she's up against Colman again, who could beat her again because she's in a Best Picture contender and Glenn Close isn't, yada yada yada. However, a win for Glenn Close at the SAGs would indicate support for her to win at the Oscars. Because what Glenn Close has now, which she didn't have the last time, is that unforgettable upset loss the previous time. That was only 2 years ago. It's an upset that is still fresh in the Academy's minds. They're not gonna forget that. That's gonna come into play when they are deciding how to place their votes. I mean, she even wore a gold dress the last time. Even she thought she was winning that year. Her narrative is too emotional to ignore. But regardless, whoever ends up winning the SAG, whether it's Glenn Close, Yuh-Jung Youn, Olivia Colman, Maria Bakalova, I will probably end up placing my prediction on whoever wins that award. Because the Best Supporting Actress winners at the SAGs the past 10 years have matched 9 times out of 10 with the Oscars. The only exception was Regina King for If Beale Street Could Talk. So that's where I'd say is the best place to look for an indicator as to who is going to win Best Supporting Actress at the Oscars. Look at who wins the SAG. When it comes to who I personally want to see win, I'm honestly fine with any of them winning. However, my 2 personal favourite performances of this bunch were Yuh-Jung Youn and Olivia Colman. And if I had to pick between the 2 of them, I would give it to Yuh-Jung Youn because Olivia Colman has won so recently. Also, it would be nice to see an Asian winner, the first ever South Korean actor to win. And also, Yuh-Jung Youn made my heart swell 3 times its normal size whilst watching Minari. But who do I think will win Best Supporting Actress? Honestly, even when I was writing my notes up for this video, I changed my mind like 3 times, and even now I'm not 100% sure on who it's going to be. My head says one thing, my heart says another, and my gut tells me something completely different. It should be Maria Bakalova, based on statistics. Plus, her win is a victory for comedy. But I think her performance is going to be a little too peculiar for some of the older, more traditional members of the Academy. I don't think they're all necessarily going to get it, and I think they're gonna think the nomination is enough recognition for Bakalova. I don't think the Academy is ready to acknowledge a performance like this yet. The fact that it's nominated is a step in the right direction. However, I still think it's too different to what they're used to honor it. I also think that because this category is such a tight race this year, that the voters will be looking for legitimate reasons for who not to give it to, which makes me think they're not gonna feel the need to acknowledge Olivia Colman so soon after her previous win. So I think it's between Yuh-Jung Youn and Glenn Close. The battle of the veterans, or grandma v grandma. Either they give it to Glenn Close as a career award, or they give it to Yuh-Jung Youn for her scene-stealing performance in Minari. It's going to be a photo finish, and the outcome of the SAGs will affect my choice. But for now, I'm going to say that the winner will be Yuh-Jung Youn. I think more voters will have seen Minari than Hillbilly Elegy. Yuh-Jung Youn's track record is stronger. She's won loads of awards in the critics circles and at film festivals. And also with the backlash to last year's Oscars by having no performances by Asian actors in the lineup, and Best Picture went to Parasite. And also with this year being a very politically charged year with the Black Lives Matter movement and more discussions about representation of people of color within the industry, I think the Academy will want to rectify the issue of last year by acknowledging performances from diverse actors. So Yuh-Jung Youn seems like the best pick out of this bunch. Her winning is a step for progress and inclusivity. She'll be the first ever Korean actor to win an Oscar. Plus, everybody loves Minari, and they're going to want to honor it somewhere, and Yuh-Jung Youn seems like the most likely. However, don't be too surprised if Glenn Close snatches this. She does have the best story, and sometimes the Academy can't resist a good story. There you have it, guys. That was my analysis of the 2021 Best Supporting Actress category. But what do you guys think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Comment down below. Who is your predicted winner and why? If you guys have any more requests for Oscar categories for me to dive into, let me know in that comment section down below. Help support my channel by hitting that thumbs up button. If you want more Oscars content, don't forget to click subscribe. And if you want to stay up to date with all my Oscars content, be sure to follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd. They're all in that video description down below. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. For more things related to movies, TV, and popcorn culture, I'm Luke Airfield, and I'll see you next time.